What's up, guys? Welcome into All Tied Up with me, your co-host, Chris Marler, as well as my good buddy, Clint Lamb. Clint, it is fantastic to talk to you. It is a Monday. It is, depending on where you're joining us from, 5, 4, 3, could be 2 p.m. I don't know. Time zone math is not my thing. What is my thing is talking about Bama football today with you, and we are going to be answering some questions from the audience. First and foremost, though, how is your Monday going?
It's going wonderful, Chris.
Is it better than Bruce Pearl's?
Man, well, I don't know. I feel like you've adopted his. Like if someone says something, you're kind of like me. Like Twitter is like your way. Like, and I do this in my personal life too, where I see the landmine. The landmine is clearly avoidable.
Yeah,
it's not buried, but sometimes you're like, let me step on this and just see what happens, and
yeah,
it never
it's
ends
fun.
well.
I got 2 arms. I can lose one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how we come out on the other end of this thing. But yeah, no, it's going great, man. I'm excited to talk a little Alabama football, a little more Alabama football. Me and Mick were doing this just a couple hours ago, but now we're going to be answering some mailbag questions, some interesting questions, and this will kind of get perfected. You know, I realized after I'd taken the questions that didn't put names with it and all that stuff. We'll actually pull it up on screen in the future and do all that, get everybody involved as much as we can. But we did get one more question that I threw in here at the end, but 4 total questions. We'll kind of probably, I guess, go ahead and dive right into the first one if you want to.
Well, we're actually going to do 5 because I got a surprise one for you that I know is not included into. Roll Tide, cover Crimson, Roll Tide, everyone from Jim McEwen and Southern Red. Thanks for joining us. This is honestly, I think, one of the more important questions, just that you and I need to know in this friendship and where we both stand, like emotionally and also logically. It's from Russell Ledford, and that's on Twitter, Bama Dad 2 times. That's different than my Twitter handle, which is Bama Son 0 times because of my dad. That's a good joke. It's a tough start.
I'm worried about being live with you now.
Yeah, you really should be. No, but Russell Ledford says, pizza rolls or bagel bites? There is a correct answer.
Okay, first of all. Okay, anyways, all tied up where we talk not the Alabama, apparently.
We're going to talk about Bama in just 1 second. Answer the question, weirdo.
Well, I mean, it's pizza rolls is the clear-cut answer.
I was going to say bagel bites. Let's just quit the show and never talk again.
Wait, you're a bagel bites guy?
I love bagel bites. You know what I think it is? I think it's that I love bagels. And also when you have a bagel bite, it's an open face. So like you don't have lava just pouring into the back of your tongue for like a pizza roll. A pizza roll is that you're talking about a landmine. It is a landmine for like you might have a really good pizza roll, or you might not be able to taste anything for 3 to 11 days.
I'm just trying to imagine people who are jumping in right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, heck yeah, more Alabama, Western Kentucky talk. Let's do it. And then they hop in, they're like, pizza rolls and bagel bites. What are we doing?
Sorry for bringing some joy to your Monday. We'll start with the Bama talk on All Tied Up here. All right, it's our first question. Like we said, we do not have the names of who they came from, but this is the first question of this show. It says, will you be looking at these first 3 weeks as a sign that the team is ready or not for the real season to begin in week 5 versus Georgia? No disrespect for the first 3 opponents, especially Wisconsin, who maybe I'm underestimating on the road, but obviously we expect to start 3-0. But what positions are you going to be looking at for performance early on to project potential success later in the season?
For me, there'll be positions involved, certainly, like cornerback against Western Kentucky, air raid offense. They're going to want to throw the football around. They got, some dudes, whether it be at receiver. They got, a couple of really good offensive linemen. TJ Finley has SEC experience and had a really good season for Texas State last year. The offense, it's going to be pretty good for Western Kentucky. And they're going to throw some different things at Alabama that Alabama might not see again the rest of the season. But so corner is naturally going to be the answer that you want to go with, because you've got potentially a true freshman starting. You've got, at least 1 transfer in Damani Jackson, potentially 2 in Deshaun Jones if he ends up getting some action. So like nobody, the only returning corner is obviously Jaleel Hurley, and we haven't heard really anything about him being involved. So that would probably be the number one that I'll be looking for. I don't know about you, Chris, but for me, which I mean, I love how you did say the first 3 weeks. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand Wisconsin. It might not be Georgia, but I do. I feel like going on the road to Madison against a Big Ten team like Wisconsin is going to be. I mean, that's going to be a pretty tough test. So I would say the first couple of weeks, and even then, I'll probably end up on some message boards for not giving these guys. Nick Saban will probably come out of nowhere and slap me for not giving Western Kentucky or USF enough respect. But I'm more so looking for a couple of things as far as avoiding penalties, early down success. I've talked a lot about that. I feel like that is so critical right now to have more early down success, put yourself in more favorable situations. How is the offense and defense playing off of each other? How much complementary football are they playing? Granted, it's the first couple of weeks, it's kind of tough to determine that. We'll know a lot more of that come Wisconsin in week 3, but it's like, okay, your defense gets a big stop. How is your offense complementing that? Are they going out there and going 3 and out and putting the defense right back on the field and crashing all momentum? Or is it a situation maybe where it's Western Kentucky? They do like to throw the football around. They give up a big touchdown to Western Kentucky. They catch them off guard, new secondary, score a 70-yard touchdown or something. Does the offense immediately go out there and go 3 and out and put the defense right back on the field? Like, these are bad signs, in my opinion. That's going to happen sometimes, but I'm looking more so for complementary football. I'm looking for disciplined football. And then, especially in these early stages, I'm looking for usage. Like, how often are guys being used? What's their roles? How much time is certain guys spending in the slot? How often is the Wolf playing off the ball? I don't think it's going to be a ton. How often are you getting 2 Wolves on the field together? All these different things. So I think there are some early signs that you can look for. That would certainly be some of mine. Is there any that you would add to that?
Yeah, honestly, I would. So I think that one, I was right now years old when I finally put together that TJ Finley is the quarterback at Western Kentucky. That
Fourth
is
going 4 years.
Yeah, which is like he's a guy that has like a really, really good arm, and I hate to use this example because I know it's not just because he went to the same school at one point with LSU, kind of like a Zach Mettenberger type thing, where it's like it's a very tall, very strong arm pocket passer, but like not mobile at all. We saw that. I know he was kind of banged up in the 2021 Iron Bowl, but like not a mobile guy at all. So for me, obviously the secondary, when you play a team like Western Kentucky who throws the ball all over the field, that's huge. But I also want to see this. This should be a situation where those guys off the edge should eat early in the season and get into the backfield and see who are some of the names we're going to replace Braswell and Turner with in that situation, because like you should be able to at least get some pressure on this guy strictly because of how that's a good point for Michael Beals too about eating in this defense from Turner and Anderson. But you should be able to get at least some pressure regardless of how quick they get the ball out and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. And the other thing is, like you said, I think the situation with the defensive backs and figuring out what the right combination is back there, how often you're going to have 5 versus 6 guys. Because we keep talking about Western Kentucky and everyone talks about Wisconsin from the Camp Randall standpoint. I think it's going to be a tough environment and it's going to be something that'll be, not an easy road win. We saw that last year early on, right? But when you go up there, it's lucky you get an 11 a.m. kick. And Phil Longo, who by all means, like they didn't have a great offense last year, it's still an offense that's put up a lot of points and yards at times during his career when he's been the play caller. You saw it at UNC. You saw it at times when he had Jordan Ta'amu at Ole Miss, even though they didn't do it against Bama. They did it to pretty much the rest of the league. So I wonder what that looks like with Tyler Van Dyke, the transfer quarterback from Miami. Again, that's still a kid that had like 6 straight 300-yard passing games at the end of 2 seasons ago. So there's talent there. And you're also going into year 2 with Luke Fickell as the head coach. And as you know, the biggest jump that almost every single head coach makes and his team makes is from year 1 to year 2. Like, I think there's a stat I saw a couple years ago. It's like the average just on offense, the average difference in year 1 and year 2 is around 7.8 points per game. You have a jump in because you have your systems in place. The defense is a little bit better as well. So that's just something I think I'm looking to look at, I guess, for lack of better words, in the first couple of weeks. Secondary, obviously, I want to know those guys are going to get tested up in Madison. Like, they're going to get tested early.
Yeah, and just facing adversity too. That's another part of it. And it's kind of like, okay, we had heard about how good Alabama's offensive line was going to be last year, and then you get to the MTSU game and it doesn't look good at all.
Right.
And then you find all these reasons to justify that, and it's like, well, MTSU, they play with a very attacking front. They take a lot of risks, but that also leads to a lot of busted coverages, a lot of big plays. You did see that from Alabama's offense. They capitalized on some of that. But really what we saw in that game was kind of foreshadowing to what we were going to see all year, was just a very inconsistent run game. Guys weren't being put in a position to be successful. So it's like, how well are these things clicking? And there's going to be some early season rust involved in that. There always is, but it's just, how quickly can these guys get on the same page? Obviously, Jalen Milroe, a lot of talent in that room. You are going to have Kobe Prentice at wide receiver.
Yeah.
You're going to have Kendrick Law, some familiarity, but you also got to realize there's a lot of new targets as well. So getting on the same page with them live in the game, that could take a little while. But that's something I will certainly be keeping an eye on.
We also have like one thing real quick about Wisconsin too, is that the one thing it's almost like become like an afterthought, and even for me, is that is still a Luke Fickell coach team. Like defense has been their calling card for the last several years. And, we saw it when they were at Cincinnati, and that coaching staff was at Cincinnati, where it's like that was a defensive first team. I love what Lance Hunter says here in the comments, that Brailsford was sent by Jesus. Man, I tell you what, that ain't the truth. That first snap hitting Jalen Milroe directly in the hands is going to hit like crack, Clint. I don't even care how that sounds. That's going to be a sight for sore eyes. Let's move on to our next question here, and it is, where are you most nervous heading up into the season? Like, if Alabama was playing Georgia this Saturday, what would have you the most concerned about this Alabama team?
You want to take that one first? You want me to go?
I think the easy answer is the defensive secondary, right? But for me, my concern is, what if the offensive line isn't improved? And part of this, again, like the biggest concern going into the season for me, to be clear, is the secondary, because you're so young. You are very talented, but you're so young. And again, you replace 12 players from last year's secondary this year that you either lost to the portal or to the NFL draft. Like even Bama has struggled at times to replace two cornerbacks. Like, we've had to replace one, right? Like, D. Milner was a first-round pick. Drake Kirkpatrick was a first-round pick. You had all sorts of guys that had been first-round type corners in the secondary under Saban, but rarely did you have to replace this much talent in the secondary that you lost. You lost two guys that I think were both first-round grades at cornerback, with Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry, obviously. Just two guys that did a phenomenal job. And then you lose arguably the best safety or defensive back at any position right now in college football, in Caleb Downs. So it's hard to replace 12 dudes like that with, even no matter how many 5-stars you have coming in, to replace them. But I'll say the offensive line instead, just because we've talked about the secondary so much, and you guys have heard me bring the numbers up before, and if you haven't, I'll say them again. The most sacks allowed by any offensive line in program history. You had more sacks allowed in last season than Washington, Oregon, Georgia, and Michigan gave up combined. You had 11 more sacks allowed last year than Georgia has allowed in the last 3 years combined. Like, those are crazy numbers. And Georgia was brought up in this actual question. So I think that's one of the reasons why you hold those two comparisons up. What if the offensive line isn't improved? Like, it would be hard for me to think that it wouldn't be, just because of how low the bar was set a year ago in terms of protection at times. But what if going into year two, you see these same concerns? And that's what I think would be the biggest worry for me, because I think the biggest disappointment we could see from this Alabama team, when they take the field on offense, if there's a 3 and out on offense, I don't know how I'll feel about that. Like, I think we've all been so excited and geared up to see what this offense will look like under Kalen DeBoer. So if that happens, I'd be pretty disappointed. But, like I said, just to kind of mix it up and not use a secondary, because it's been such a talking point all offseason, if the offensive line isn't improved, or, if Milroe running out of bounds is countered to sack, they had about 12 of those, but Lance Hunter said, I don't even know if that's that far from inaccurate. But if that also hasn't progressed, do you remember, like, at the beginning of the season, how many times he rolled out to his right and then just took like an inexplicable like 6 to 8 yard loss at the start of the year. Like that would be another concern as well.
Yeah, I just, oh man, part of me, I don't see a scenario where the offensive line's not improved. I have such a hard time because this scheme protects the offensive line in a lot of ways. Like it's more of a rhythmic passing game that's built on timing. You're going to get the football out of the hands. I think Jalen Milroe pre-snap is going to be able to recognize a lot more, understand kind of where he's going to want to go with the football. And just the fact that they use all this, they use motion a ton. You'll see multiple guys motioning back and forth to create confusion, and just the fact that they run variety, variety of plays. You'll see the exact same look, the exact same motion or motion combination, and they'll run 4 or 5 different things off of it. And just from a defense's perspective, a lot of east-west running, as far as, getting the ball out really quickly out, on a wide receiver screen or whatever. And then what they do is they kind of set up your run game based off of that, or at least that's how they operated at Washington. And so what it does is, the way that they attack you, and they'll kind of switch it up. They'll go huddle at times. They'll slow down, but then they'll go hurry up, and they'll use that tempo offense. And, just they put a strain on you in just so many different ways as a defense that it really slows down your defensive line and prevents them from playing a penetrative style of football, which naturally will put your offensive line at a natural advantage. Like they'll have to slow play things. They'll give your offensive line, who already knows that they know the snap count, they know the play, so they already have a natural built-in advantage anyways. But that's kind of magnified a little bit in Kalen DeBoer's offense. Plus, with the lost weight, that's kind of, that's going to help as far as your pass protection. But the reason that it's going to help with Kalen DeBoer's offense, and this is why I say the early down success is so important. If it's 3rd and 8, the defense knows what you're doing.
Right.
Like, you don't have to worry about, it don't matter what motion and what all you're doing pre-snap or eye candy you're showing or whatever. Defense kind of knows what's happening, and they can tee off on you a little bit more when it's 3rd and 8 or it's 3rd and 12 or whatever. So that's why I say it's very important to avoid those situations as much as possible, because this offense can be lethal if you can have that early down success. So I think that's really important. The biggest concern for me would be depth. I think the offensive line depth has really come along quite nicely. I feel really good about it. I think they got 3 starting caliber tackles. I think they got, Gino Vandemark, the fact that he's kind of stepped up and he can play all 3 interior positions. The fact that we've heard good things about Rock Montgomery, he's got that center guard versatility. And then, Olas and Lennon, that's another guy. So I think at tackle, they're probably 3 deep as far as guys they feel comfortable with. On the interior, I would say 5 deep, potentially, maybe 6 for 3 spots. So, you have to feel good about the depth with the offensive line, the way that it's come along, but it would be depth in the secondary. Love King Mack. Love Red Morgan. I think Bray Hubbard is pretty close to being able to be a contributor and a good player. It's mostly at corner, and it's not they don't have the talent. And we think they can go 3 deep at corner. But then if an injury happens, now you're down to 2, and now you're really worried about anything else happening. So depth at corner would be my biggest concern. And, really it would just be a matter of, I think they're going to have to work out some kinks. Like if they're playing Georgia this weekend, I'd be really concerned, because Georgia has a lot more continuity as far as what they've got coming back compared to Alabama. So that would be my biggest concern is, hey, if we were playing them, week 3, week 4, like they are, we'd have a little bit of time to work some things out. But in the meantime, it can be kind of difficult.
I do love the fact that you also get an extra week off this year with the way the schedule's set up. And so you get 2 bye weeks. You have one of those before Georgia. Like this might be, it feels like this is the earliest they've had a bye week, maybe ever. Maybe in that 2013 season, they might have had one before A&M, I feel like, for some crazy reason. I could be wrong about that, though. But either way, that part is a very good point. The other part, too, is when we talk about the secondary, we automatically, think about, like, how are they going to be against the pass? Like, how are they going to be at, like, on the boundaries? Like how are they going to be in man? So, like, all those things, especially in comparison to the last 2 guys you had, because I think you had one of the best combos at the 2 cornerback positions that you've had in a very, very long time with Terry
and Trey Amos. Trey Amos ended up being when he came in early in the season against Texas, it was pretty rough. But when he started getting comfortable, man, he was like, you wouldn't expect, first round production from him when he came in, but that was about as good of a number 3 as you could have asked for. And that's what everybody, is hoping Deshaun Jones can be if he ends up being that third guy.
Well, but the other part of it too is how physical they were and how sure of tacklers they were, right? Like especially Kool-Aid. Like that's one thing too that I wonder what these guys are going to look like because, listen, I think Jamai Jackson's a guy that comes in with 5-star status and all that kind of stuff out of high school, and he comes from a big name program, but not a lot of people out there playing defense, on the West Coast, especially for Southern Cal. But I think those are two that make the most. I thought there was a good point here in the comments that was made, by the way. Let me scroll up here. It's from SK. How many games does Bama win with punting and kicking? That's another thing too. Like I love the fact that the secondary could be. I'm sorry, it's not the secondary. The special teams could be one of the better strengths of this team, which is I think it's one of those stupid punchline era type things, as my buddy JD Piquel will always say. Like people love to make a punchline about so and so sucks, or there's like Bama kicking, blah blah. Like Bama's had very very good kicking under over the last probably 4+ years because of Will Reichard, very consistent no matter what. It's been a while, it feels like, since we've had both of those things, right? Like J.K. Scott was he was a weapon. There's just no other way to put it. He was a weapon to have even at the punting position. So I love the fact that you have yet another year coming back with at punter, and then you replace Reichard with the guy who ended up beating him for the Lou Groza Award. I think a lot of Bama fans were probably a little bit salty and don't think that he should have got it. But like you said, like Burnup is a good punter, and you're replacing maybe your best kicker in program history with the guy that beat him out a year ago for the award for the best kicker in the country. So there you go. The third question before we get into the secret one that you apparently have that I don't. Let's see, there's 4, right? This is the third one.
It's not super secret. It's
who is the most underrated player on this team? I don't think enough has been said about Keon Sapp's importance. This guy can be better than Caleb Downs. Now I will tell you this. I'll answer first, and before I even answer, I'm gonna tell this mystery person who submitted it. 1, thank you for the submission. 2, watch the last episode because we actually talked about Keon Sabb on All Tied Up last week. So we agree with you. We completely agree with you. I think that is a name that's not being talked enough about. Now back to the question for this episode: the most underrated player on the team. I will give you 2 because I'm long-winded and love attention. And I will, instead of saying underrated, I will tell you 2 names that at least aren't being talked enough about this offseason. I'm not saying that they're the most underrated on the team, but they are not being talked nearly enough about their production or importance to the team this year. And that is CJ Dupree at tight end. And what he's been able to provide at times at that position, especially now that Nyblack's gone and you're trying to figure out who's going to be where at tight end. And the other one is, and Clint, I'll just tell you this, I don't 1,000% know I've been saying his name right, but Jaheim Otis. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know if I was adding an extra I in there. I thought it might have just been Jaheim Oates for a while. I'm getting old. Eyesight's not as great.
You also say Hayes for Justice Hayes. You say Justice Hayes all the time.
It's Haynes.
It is Haynes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up too.
Yeah,
we can that off air for sure. Yeah, I do say that all the time though. What's funny is
I'm terrible with names, so it's fun.
I thought to myself, like last week, I was like, oh man, I think I said Haynes on accident the first time I brought it up. Good thing. Hopefully no one noticed, and I started correcting myself. Turns out I have not. I did not do that correctly. But back to what I'm saying is like I'm not going to get too much into CJ Dupree. I don't even know how much he's going to be featured in this type of offense. It definitely will not be as much as I think a guy like Justice Haynes will be, or any of the receivers. But Jaheim Otis is a guy that I remember when he came in, instant impact on the defensive line in 2022 as a true freshman, that was a better defense than people gave him credit for, and just a huge body. You were fascinated with his story arc, I guess, of when he came in, the amount of weight he lost, the ability that he had from himself to get himself ready for the season. As at that age, especially, like a lot of people come into college and it's like, well, we'll figure it out, like whatever. He came in, worked his butt off, and got into the starting rotation and has been a force in the middle of that defense for the last 2 years. there was a time this offseason when Saban was retired, and you just started seeing like, dude, I remember it felt like every single day. This is dramatic, but I'm dramatic, so I don't care. It felt like I was like scared to wake up because I was like, I don't even want to get on Twitter and see who's gone now, like who. And I remember hearing from a very good source at Georgia that Caleb Downs was already enrolled. And this was a very good source. Like I'm not, he was obviously wrong, but and that Jaheim Otis was probably next. Him and Keeley were almost certainly going to be gone. And I think that if you talk to any Bama fan, they probably were kind of worried about that, both those guys leaving. I love the fact that he stayed because that's a guy that could have gotten paid this offseason with the NIL era. I think that he's one of the more underrated players in the conference, and especially for this team.
I definitely love the track of mine with CJ Dupree. In fact, because you said that, I'm going to change, I would say the entire tight end room is criminally underrated.
That seems kind of unfair. You had to one-up me, but
well, I was going to say Robbie Utes, and then you said CJ Dupree, and it's like, yeah, and then I'm like, man, and Josh Cuevas, I don't know, he's pretty underrated too. I feel like he could be a pretty good one too. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, let's just make it the whole room because I don't think there's any dynamic pass catchers in there, but I think there is some versatility, especially with Robbie Utes, which is why I kind of include him. I mean, just the fact that he can be like that inline blocker, detached, make him a move guy. I think, blocking guys on the move, blocking guys off the line of scrimmage as an inline player. I think you can be a reliable pass catcher, despite the fact that, I don't think he's going to create a lot of yardage after the catch. I don't think he's going to be some guy that creates a ton of separation underneath. I think he's going to get left open because attention's going elsewhere, and he's going to catch the football when you throw it to him. And just what he provides as a blocker, if he can provide, a complementary style in the receiving game on that front, that's kind of why, I like him. But then you bring up Dupree, and it's like, man, Dupree does a lot of that too. He's actually technically going to be the starter. So, I would say the tight end room. But I do want to point out, and I did this on the last show that we just did, because I want to get your take on it as well. Chris, it is just mind-boggling to me that you've got Jaden Roberts not even making third team All-SEC. Because to me, I'm not saying he should be on these All-American lists necessarily, but I think he should be in the conversation for all of them. I don't think he's too far off from a Parker Brailsford or a Tyler Booker as far as talent. And yet he's not only is he not in those conversations for the All-American team, he didn't make first, second, or third team All-SEC, which is just crazy to me. I understand from an Alabama fan's perspective, he gets plenty of respect. Everybody loves him, his personality, amazing. What he did last year, stepping up and stepping in, being the third team guard, and just the way he kind of stabilized, in my opinion. I mean, obviously the offensive line never was that good last year, but it got a lot better when he was putting.
Got a lot better when he came in.
I mean, I think he is criminally underrated on a national level, and I think some people are going to regret that.
Yeah. Oh, we got a Tennessee fan that's infiltrated the chat.
You want me to pull up the plate? You want me to pull it up?
Alabama this year is like the one slow white kid that nobody picked on the playground. I don't want to get into slow white kids, but if Bama's the slow white kid, what stereotype is Tennessee? Because that is and we don't need to answer that question because we're not trying to get canceled on this show. But
someone yesterday commented, I don't even know if I should say this, but somebody commented, Auburn fan commented and said that that Alabama's situation was like Afghanistan when they started pulling stuff out, and there was nothing. And I was just like, if Alabama's Afghanistan, Auburn's South Sudan. So
probably should not have said that. Anyway, that's enough politics out here. All Tied Up, brought to you by Bruce Pearl, thoughts on Twitter. No, so here's the thing. I think that Jaden Roberts, what he brings to the table, guard to guard, like guard center guard, this is the best combination of talent that I think Bama's had in maybe since 2012.
Yeah,
I mean, physically it's the most imposing. Physically it's the most talented. I don't say Parker Brailsford. In the depth chart or on in the media guide at Washington, he was like 272. I'm not sure what that looks like. I don't care what his weight is because he clearly was the best center in the country a year ago, right? I do. I don't. Okay. I don't. The chat has lost. The chat is unhinged, and I think it's my fault. But here's the thing. I think. I do think that guard to guard, you have maybe the best interior offensive line in the entire country, as long as they stay healthy, especially. But Roberts is a guy that brings so much physicality. And like the only reason I'm confused or surprised, I guess is a better way to put it, that he hasn't been included in those things is because physically he is like he looks incredible. And like in this day and age of college football, we do get caught up a lot of times with, how you look getting off the bus and how you look in, not even just in pads, but like in shells or the underwear Olympics that you see at the NFL Combine every year and all that kind of stuff. He fits all those, but he also on the field let the tape talk. Like he's a very, very good player. So I would agree with that as well. All right, that's the three questions I have. What's the extra one that you have?
Real simple. Does Elijah Pritchett have quick enough feet to block speed rush?
Brother, I haven't. All the feet that I'm looking at online have nothing to do with Bama offensive linemen. So
what now?
What happened? What did you say?
Okay. All right. This is
I'll let you answer that one.
Off the rails. I do think he does. Yeah. I don't think his technique was good at all. Like you saw, and I put up a tweet about it last A-Day. Elijah Pritchett was playing left tackle. J.C. Latham was playing right tackle. And it was before, Caden Proctor was on campus, but he hadn't won the starting job. He really wasn't even working with the first team too much back in the spring. But there was a couple of snaps and just the initial pass sets, the quickness that J.C. Latham was getting back there and cutting off his rusher, that was playing a wide nine technique, it was great. It's kind of like Evan Neal in the NFL. I feel like his big problem right now, it's not that he doesn't have the athleticism necessarily. It's more of the technique where he's relying too much on, not taking those initial steps enough of them, and he's trying to turn and pivot and carry the guy, and just anybody playing that wide nine technique is going to bend. You're done. You're toast. Elijah Pritchett was having that same problem at left tackle in the spring game of last year, where he was relying way too much on, not getting the depth that he needed. J.C. Latham on his first step, he gets such an incredible amount of depth on that initial pass set, and Elijah Pritchett it was little to non-existent. And it's just, I understand that if you can be super athletic, but you got to get there. You can't. And I think that Elijah Pritchett, just from a technical standpoint, I think he's improved.
Yeah.
He's probably not where he needs to be, but I also think playing right tackle, you won't be going against that quite as much. You still will be, but I think him playing on the right side should really help him compared to the left.
Yeah, and I do love the fact that Caden Proctor has legitimately won the left tackle position, and that you also have now provided depth at both sides. Like that is that's not something that I think you would have. I don't even think that's wrong that Formby beats out Pritchett, but I just think that you also have like more legitimate depth, like you said. And here's the thing too, like if you have that kind of depth, because you didn't have it last year. If Proctor continues to struggle like he did at times, a year ago, or if Formby does, now you don't feel as bad about putting in new people, right? That's a good point right there from SEC Outsider. It says that 2020 offensive line, interior offensive line, was really, really good as well. So I think that's a good point. That's all we got for the mailbag today, man. It's been a good episode. I believe that's it, right?
Yeah, I do want to add, like, as far as like just predictions. This right here, I think Caden Proctor is going to be pretty good, pretty darn good.
Yeah,
I think Wilkin Formby is going to be Alabama's best offensive tackle this year.
You think Wilkin Formby is?
I think he's going to win the job, and I think he's going to be the best offensive tackle Alabama has. And I think Caden Proctor is going to be good too.
Yeah.
So that's not I think he's. I'm a huge believer in Wilkin Formby, and I think he's going to do really, really good things for this offensive line. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think, just from a physical standpoint, what he does well, I think he can kind of fit in, multiple blocking schemes.
Yeah.
Can, do the gap stuff. zone, all those different things, can play left to right tackle. But I like the fact that all of his background really is at right tackle, and they've left him there. He hadn't been switching back and forth like Elijah Pritchett. That's good. So I do. I'm going to go ahead and call my shot with Wilkin Formby, and say that he's Alabama's best offensive tackle this year. And that's not a knock on anybody else. I think Wilkin Formby will be that good.
I love it. Listen, I got to get this dog outside because I can hear his stomach rumbling over here from the
That's
desk.
your stomach, big
dog. I appreciate you obviously doing this. We'll be back again this week. Make sure y'all keeping up with everything with Cover Crimson. Make sure you're following along with All Tied Up. Go follow Cover Crimson, like, subscribe, all the good things, all the things we need y'all to do, and all the things that'll help you guys get even more content. It is not just me and Clint. It is a whole team of people, and a whole team of people that, to be quite frank, aren't nearly as unhinged as I am, and probably won't make feet jokes again on this episode. So make sure you're staying tuned for everything that's coming out from the site, from the podcast, and everything on YouTube as well. We will see y'all in a couple of days, and you'll have a fantastic Monday.